The notification came at 6:47 inches the morning, when I was elbow deep in a patient's shoulder rehabilitation and had no business looking at my phone. But the buzz against my hip was the kind I had set specifically for one app, my bank's security alert system. A second buzz followed almost immediately, then a third. My patient, a retired firefighter named Gerald, who had the pain tolerance of a concrete wall, gave me a knowing look. "Go ahead, sweetheart. I've seen that face before. That's a money face." I peeled off my gloves and looked at the screen. 3 notifications from my bank. Unusual login activity detected on your home equity account. A second, new document upload signature verification in progress. A third, loan modification request initiated. I stared at the words until they stopped making sense. I was in Phoenix, Arizona, on a 13-week travel physical therapy contract. My home was a 2-bedroom townhouse in Nashville, Tennessee, that I had bought at 26 years old on nothing but stubbornness and a meticulous savings plan. I had spent 2 years refinishing those floors, repainting every room, replacing the kitchen backsplash with hand-cut tile I ordered from a small supplier in Portugal. That townhouse was not just a home, it was proof that I had built something real and lasting, in a life that was mostly temporary by design. I stepped into the hallway and dialed the bank's fraud line before I even reached the waiting room. The representative confirmed what I feared. Someone had logged into my home equity account from a device in Nashville. Someone had uploaded documents purporting to be a signed loan modification request, converting my existing equity line into a lump sum disbursement of $68,000. The disbursement had been requested, but not yet processed. There was a 48-hour review window. "Who uploaded those documents?" I asked. "The account shows a secondary authorized user," the representative said carefully, "listed as Diane, with the same last name as yours. Do you recognize that name?" "My mother." I thanked the representative, told her to flag everything, and sat down on a waiting room chair that was too small and too plastic. My manager walked past and took one look at my face and said, "Take the morning." I didn't argue. My mother was a woman who had spent 30 years presenting herself as the most reasonable person in any room. She was a high school guidance counselor with a talent for making people feel heard while steering them exactly where she wanted them to go. She had soft eyes and a warm laugh, and an extraordinary ability to reframe any situation so that she was the hero of every story. Including, apparently, this one. My brother Tyler was 26 and the permanent project of the family. He was not cruel the way some people are cruel. He was the more exhausting kind, charming, impulsive, and utterly allergic to consequences. He had done a semester of business school before dropping out. He had started a clothing brand that lasted 4 months. He had gotten into day trading during a period when our parents believed he was finally finding his path, which ended with him owing my father $12,000 he had not repaid in 3 years. The family absorbed these losses the way you absorb rain quietly, consistently, acting as though it was simply the cost of existing in the world. I was the older one, the responsible one, the one who left home at 22 and built a career that let me travel while staying financially grounded. I sent money home twice when my parents asked. I paid for my mother's emergency dental work 2 summers ago without being asked for a repayment plan. But somewhere along the way, my stability had stopped looking like something I had earned and started looking like a resource available for community use. I called my mother. It went to voicemail on the 3rd ring, the kind of voicemail you get when someone has seen your name and made a decision. I called my father, Robert. He answered on the 2nd ring, Sarah. His voice had that particular texture I had learned to read over 20 years. It was the voice of a man who had already decided on his position and was bracing for the conversation. "Dad," I said, "tell me what's happening with my home equity account." Silence. Then, "We were going to call you this week. The bank notified me this morning. Someone uploaded documents. Someone attempted to initiate a $68,000 disbursement from my account. Those documents require my signature. Dad. My actual signature. Sarah, we need to talk about this in person. We're talking about it right now. Who uploaded those documents?" Another silence. When my father spoke again, His voice had shifted into the register he used when he was about to say something he believed was entirely reasonable. Your brother is in a very serious situation. He's been working with an investment group, and there were some losses. Significant losses. These people, Sarah, they're not patient people. They've made it very clear what happens if Tyler doesn't settle the account. Your mother and I don't have that kind of liquid capital. We looked at every option. You looked at my home equity line. You have equity. Substantial equity. You're never in Nashville anyway. You're always on a contract somewhere. We figured. You figured I wouldn't notice. We figured you wouldn't make this harder than it needs to be. His voice hardened slightly. You can refinance. You're young. You make good money. Tyler's situation is urgent in a way that your financial situation simply isn't. I pressed my fingers against my forehead. My hands were very steady. That frightened me a little. Dad, listen to me carefully. Those documents required my signature. I did not sign anything, which means someone signed my name on a legal financial document. Do you understand what that is? Sarah, that is forgery. That is bank fraud. Those are federal charges. I kept my voice level. I want to know who signed those documents. And I want to know right now. The silence that followed was the kind that holds a confession in it. Your mother had the authorization, my father finally said. You gave us access years ago when you went to work in Germany. She's on the account as an authorized user for correspondence purposes. The bank accepted the documents. The Germany assignment. 3 years ago, I had added my mother to my account as a secondary contact so she could call on my behalf if there was ever a billing issue while I was abroad. Not an authorized signer. Not a financial agent. A contact. The kind of designation that meant nothing beyond receiving statements. She's not authorized to sign my name, I said quietly. Being listed as a correspondence contact doesn't give her signing authority. And Dad, even if she had been a signatory at some point, I removed that authorization 18 months ago. After the credit card. The credit card incident was the first time Tyler had overstepped in a way that left a paper trail. 18 months ago, I had discovered 2 charges on my credit card, an old card I had forgotten to formally cancel from a sporting goods retailer and an electronics store. The total was just over $3,000. When I confronted Tyler, he said he had found the card in a drawer at my parents' house while visiting and assumed it was still active and that I wouldn't mind. He said it so casually that I stood there for a full 10 seconds, trying to determine if he genuinely did not understand what he had done. After that, I had made a systematic review of every account, every card, every authorization. I removed my mother from my bank contact list. I changed every password. I sent a certified letter to my bank, explicitly revoking any secondary account access that had previously been established. I had done it quietly and told no one, because I wanted to believe it was a precaution I would never need. I had also, on the advice of a friend who was a paralegal, sent a certified letter to my parents documenting the revocation. My mother had signed the return receipt. I had the scan of it in my email and backed up to my cloud storage. I know about the revocation, Dad, I said. I have the documentation. I have the bank confirmation letter. I have the certified mail receipt with Mom's signature. Whatever she uploaded to that portal, it's not valid. And the bank is already aware that the transaction is being contested. Dead silence. Your brother is going to get hurt, my father said, and for the first time the authoritative tone slipped. Underneath it was something that sounded like genuine fear. These are not reasonable people, Sarah. They've given him a deadline. Then he should have thought about that before he made decisions that created a deadline. I hung up. I sat in the physical therapy office parking lot for 20 minutes. The Phoenix morning was already warm, the kind of dry heat that makes the air taste like the inside of a clay pot. I opened my email on my phone, found the folder I had labeled simply documentation, and confirmed everything was there. The bank revocation letter, the certified mail tracking number, the scanned return receipt with my mother's looping signature in blue ink. I forwarded the entire folder to my own secondary email as a backup, and then I called my attorney. Her name was Priya Anand, and I had hired her 2 years earlier to handle the purchase of my townhouse. She was methodical, unhurried, and completely without sentimentality about legal matters. Sarah, she said when she answered, it's early. Someone attempted to use fraudulent documentation to access my home equity line, I said. I need to know exactly what my exposure is and what I need to do in the next 48 hours. I heard the sound of a chair adjusting. Tell me everything. I told her everything. By the time I finished, she had already pulled up my file. The bank's 48-hour review is your buffer, she said. I'm going to contact their fraud department directly and provide the documentation confirming the revocation of authorization. That should be enough to halt the disbursement. But Sarah, if your mother actually forged your signature on the documents rather than just uploading her own, that's a separate criminal matter. She's listed as a correspondence contact. Whether the bank accepted her signature as valid is a different question from whether it was legally permissible. Exactly. I'll also have a letter drafted to send to your parents, documenting what has occurred and making clear that any further attempts to access your accounts will result in criminal charges. I'd recommend you get in front of this personally as well. When are you back in Nashville? I'll drive back this weekend. Good. I'll have everything in place before you arrive. I returned to the clinic. I finished my shift. I called Gerald's shoulder session, the best it had been in 3 weeks, and Gerald told me I seemed different today, more focused, somehow, than usual. I told him that sometimes clarity looks like that from the outside. That evening, in my furnished apartment in Phoenix, I did what I had learned to do in every new city. I made a plan. I wrote a list. I ordered takeout and ate it at the kitchen counter, and did not let myself feel the hollow thing that was trying to grow somewhere behind my sternum, the particular grief of discovering that the people who raised you have been conducting a private assessment of your worth and found you expendable. I drove back to Nashville on Friday after my last patient, 14 hours. I made one stop for gas and coffee in Amarillo, one for a sandwich in Oklahoma City, and I arrived in my neighborhood at 7 in the morning with the sun low and gold over the rooftops. My townhouse looked fine from the outside. The door was locked, the way I had left it. The lights were off. The small herb garden on the front step that my neighbor Mrs. Calloway watered when I was away looked healthy. Everything appeared normal. I let myself in with my key and stood in the entryway for a moment, just listening. Nothing had been taken. Nothing had been staged. Whatever my parents had attempted, it had been entirely in the financial system, not the physical one. I felt a small release of tension in my shoulders that I hadn't realized I had been carrying. By 9 that morning, I had called my mother twice, and my father once. No answer. By 11, I had received a text from my Aunt Linda, my mother's older sister. Sarah, your mom is upset. Please call her. This family doesn't need more drama right now. By noon, there were texts from my cousin Beth and my Uncle Dave on my father's side. Your dad says you're making a hard situation worse. Can we all just talk? They had made phone calls. They had presented a version of events. I could imagine the framing without even trying. Sarah is being difficult. Sarah has money and won't help. Sarah doesn't understand what her brother is going through. Sarah is choosing her property over her family. I had seen this before. Not this specific situation, but the architecture of it. My mother was a guidance counselor. She understood narrative management. When she needed support, she built a coalition. She made calls. She provided context, which was a word that in her usage meant a version of events designed to produce the desired emotional response from the recipient. The difference, this time, was that I had attended the same school. I texted my Aunt Linda. I'll be at Mom and Dad's house at 2 o'clock today. Please tell everyone who wants to understand what happened that they're welcome to be there. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Okay. I changed my clothes. I made coffee. I opened my laptop and printed 2 sets of documents, the revocation letter, the certified mail receipt, the bank's fraud flag confirmation, and the email chain I had found after logging into the family email account I had shared with my brother during college, and which he had, predictably, never thought to remove me from. Inside that account were 7 emails between Tyler and a man who called himself L. Garrett, representing an entity called Quick Capital Solutions. The emails were businesslike in the way that a teeth extraction is businesslike, efficient, emotionless, and deeply painful to read. Tyler had borrowed $50,000 at what amounted to a predatory interest rate. He had made 2 payments and then stopped. The most recent email from L. Garrett was 14 days old and contained a list of Tyler's family members' names and home addresses. The implication was not subtle. I also opened the voice recorder app on my phone and confirmed it was working properly. My parents' house was a 45-minute drive from my townhouse, in a suburb that had been nice in the 90s and was still trying to remember it. The neighborhood had that quality of maintained surfaces over aging structures. Pressure-washed driveways, new shutters, satellite dishes that had gone up in the early 2000s and never come down. 3 cars I didn't recognize were parked along the street in front of the house. One belonged to my Aunt Linda. One I assumed was my Uncle Dave's. I parked behind them and sat for a moment, both hands on the wheel, breathing evenly. The front door was unlocked. I didn't knock. The living room held 6 people. My mother, Diane, was on the sofa between my Aunt Linda and a family friend I barely recognized. My father sat in his armchair like a man who had been placed there and not moved since. My Uncle Dave stood by the window with his arms crossed. My brother Tyler was at the far end of the room, sitting on the piano bench we had inherited from my grandmother and on which neither of us had ever learned to play. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He was wearing a watch I had never seen before. My mother looked up when I came in and did something with her face that was almost relief but landed closer to accusation. "Sarah," she said. "Sweetheart, thank you for coming. Please sit down. Let's talk about this like adults." "I'll stand," I said. "Thank you, Sarah." My Uncle Dave's voice was the careful voice of a man who believed he was mediating a disagreement about something relatively minor. "Your father told me what's going on. I understand you're upset, but Tyler is in genuine danger here, and I think—" "What did my father tell you?" I asked. Dave looked slightly wrong-footed. "That there was a misunderstanding about your bank account. That your mother tried to help Tyler, and that you're upset about how it was handled." "A misunderstanding," I repeated. I looked at my mother. "Is that what you told them?" "Sarah, this isn't the time to—" "Mom," I said it quietly, not unkindly, "tell them what you uploaded to my bank portal." Diane adjusted her posture. She had the practiced calm of someone who had navigated hundreds of difficult conversations professionally. "I made an inquiry on your behalf. You're listed on the account. I removed you from that account 18 months ago. You signed the certified letter confirming you received notice of the revocation." I reached into the folder I was carrying and set a single page on the coffee table. "That's the mail receipt. That's your signature." Aunt Linda looked down at the page. She said nothing. "You uploaded documents requiring my signature," I continued. "I did not sign those documents. My name appears on them. I did not put it there." I looked at my father. "Dad, who signed my name?" Robert looked at the middle distance between us. His jaw moved slightly. "It doesn't matter," my mother said sharply. "What matters is that Tyler is in real danger, Sarah. These people are not going to wait forever. We needed capital, and you had capital, and you're never there anyway." "I'm never there," I said. "So my property is available for general use." "That's not what I said." "It's exactly what you said. You said it to Dad on the phone Thursday morning, and you said it, in different words, when you signed those documents." I paused. "You also said it in the email to Tyler last week." The room shifted. My mother's expression changed just barely, just enough for me to see it. A small recalibration. "What email?" Tyler said. "The one from the family account. The account you and I shared in college. The one you never removed me from." I looked at my brother without particular emotion. It wasn't coldness. It was something closer to the way you feel when you've already grieved something and arrived on the other side of it. "You asked Mom how they were going to get the money without telling me. She said, and I'm going to quote this directly, 'Sarah's equity line is the cleanest option. She's so independent, she barely checks her accounts. We'll have the money moved before her contract ends and settle it before she notices. She won't make a scene.'" Silence. Aunt Linda quietly set down the mug she had been holding. "She won't make a scene," I said again. "That was the plan. That I am too passive and too distanced from my own finances to notice $68,000 being removed from my home equity, and that even if I did notice, I would not make a scene, Because I never do. My mother opened her mouth. I have the email, I said. I have the bank fraud confirmation. I have the certified mail receipt. I have documentation of every step of this. I set the folder on the coffee table next to the first sheet. I also have this. I opened my phone and pressed play. The recording was from Thursday evening, after I had spoken to my attorney and called my father back to give him a formal notification that I was contesting the transaction. In that call, my father had said, among other things, that my refusal to cooperate was going to destroy this family, that I was choosing a number on a balance sheet over my own brother's life, and that my mother had only done what any mother would do to protect her child. He had also said, very clearly, that Tyler's creditors had people, and that I was going to feel responsible if anything happened to Tyler because of my stubbornness. I let the recording play until the end, 23 seconds. The room was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator running in the kitchen. The bank has already flagged the transaction, I said. Once the recording ended, the disbursement will not go through. My attorney has filed a fraud alert with the bank's legal department. The documentation of the unauthorized signature has been sent to the branch manager and to the bank's fraud investigation unit. None of that is reversible. It's done. Tyler made a sound. A small, compressed sound, like something letting go of pressure. Alice, you can't. He looked at me with the expression of someone very young and very frightened. His voice had lost the studied nonchalance it usually wore. These people already came to the house. They came to Mom and Dad's house last Tuesday. They just sat in a car in the driveway for an hour and then left. Do you know what that's like? I know what it's like to get a fraud alert about your own bank account at 6 in the morning, I said. I know what it's like to find out your family had a strategy meeting about how to access your money without your knowledge. I know what it's like to see your own name on a document you never signed. We were trying to save him, my mother said, and for the first time her voice broke at the edge. He is my son. He is in danger. I am his mother. What was I supposed to do, Sarah? What would you have done? I would have called me, I said. I would have picked up the phone and told me the truth and asked for help. That is what I would have done. I looked at her, and I meant what I said next. I might have helped, Mom, if you had asked, if you had treated me like a person instead of a resource. She started to cry. The tears were real. I knew they were real because I knew my mother, and the tears she deployed strategically looked different from these. These were smaller and quicker, and accompanied by a specific set of lines around her eyes that she had no control over. I did not move toward her. Sarah, come on, Dave said, his voice strained. She's your mother. Whatever happened with the paperwork? It's not paperwork, Dave, I said. Someone forged my signature on a financial document. That is a federal crime. I have evidence of it. Whether I choose to pursue criminal charges is still a decision I'm making. The word criminal landed in the room like something dropped from a height. You wouldn't, my father said. It was the first thing he had said since I arrived, and the certainty in his voice was almost impressive. I haven't decided yet, I said honestly. I don't want to. That's not why I'm standing in this room right now. I'm here because you called every person in this family before you would pick up the phone and talk to me, and I am tired of being managed. I'm here to make sure everyone in this room has the same information, because I refuse to be the villain in a story I wasn't allowed to write. Dave sat back in his chair. He looked at my father, and my father looked at the floor. Tyler, I said. He looked up. How much do you actually owe? He swallowed. With the interest, about $62,000. And these people, Garrett, and Quick Capital Solutions, did you sign a contract? Yeah. Do you have a copy? Somewhere. Then here is what is going to happen. I picked up my folder from the coffee table. You're going to find that contract and send it to my attorney. Because predatory lending contracts are frequently unenforceable, and the way these people have been operating, sending emails with family member addresses, showing up to sit in driveways may already constitute criminal harassment. There may be more options than you think. Tyler blinked. You'd help me? After all this? I'm not helping you, I said clearly. I'm helping myself. Because if these people come to my door because of your debt, I want a legal basis to involve law enforcement. It's not the same thing. I paused. But send my attorney the contract. I looked around the room one more time. My Aunt Linda was staring at her hands. My Uncle Dave had the look of a man who had driven 45 minutes expecting a family meeting and arrived at something considerably larger. My mother was still crying quietly, her hands folded in her lap. My father had not looked at me since the recording ended. I'm going home, I said. My actual home, the one I own. If anyone comes near my accounts again, I will press charges without warning and without hesitation. That's not a threat. That's just what will happen. I walked to the door and then stopped because there was one more thing, and it needed to be said plainly. You told each other I wouldn't make a scene. I'm not making a scene. I'm just saying the same things I've always said. The only difference is I'm saying them out loud, in front of everyone, the way you should have talked to me from the beginning. I drove home with the windows down. Nashville in April smells like cut grass and something floral I have never been able to identify, and I drove through it at 30 miles an hour while the morning settled into itself. The days that followed were not peaceful, but they were navigable. My attorney confirmed that the bank had closed the fraud investigation, rejected the unauthorized disbursement, and flagged the account for additional identity verification going forward. Tyler's contract with Quick Capital Solutions was, as Priya had suspected, riddled with violations of Tennessee's lending statutes. Within 2 weeks, a cease and desist letter backed by documentation of those violations convinced L. Garrett to renegotiate to a substantially lower settlement figure. My parents took a loan against their car, and my father's small investment account, and covered the reduced amount themselves. No one called it fair, but it was done. My mother called me 6 weeks after the living room meeting. It was a Wednesday evening in May. I was back in Phoenix, halfway through my final weeks on the contract, eating dinner on my small apartment balcony, while the sunset did something extraordinary over the western edge of the city. I answered. I want to explain, she said. I know you do, I said. I don't expect you to understand. You've never had a child. I know. But you're my child too, Sarah. I know I handled it wrong. I know that. Her voice was steady, but barely. I convinced myself that you were strong enough to absorb it. That because you're capable, it was less serious when it happened to you. That's not right. I know it's not right. I sat with that for a moment. The sky had gone from orange to deep rose, and below the balcony, a dog was walking its owner around the apartment complex's small fountain. Thank you for saying that, I finally said. I mean it. Can we? She started. Not yet, I said. I'm not ready. But I heard you. She said okay. She said goodbye. I finished my dinner. A month later, I drove back to Nashville for good, ending the contract early by 2 weeks because my townhouse had a small roof leak that had been discovered during a heavy rainstorm, and I wanted to fix it myself. I spent 4 days on the problem, pulling back the damaged flashing, sourcing the right replacement material, doing the work with my own hands in the early morning before the June heat became prohibitive. On the third morning, Mrs. Calloway leaned over the fence between our properties and offered me a coffee. I climbed down off the ladder and took it, and stood there in my work clothes while the neighborhood woke up around us. You doing all right? She asked. She was the kind of woman who asked that question and actually waited for the answer. Getting there, I said. I noticed you were gone a long time, she said. Then suddenly you're back and pulling apart your own roof. It needed doing. I'm glad you came back. She looked at the townhouse for a moment. You did a beautiful job with this place, you know. Every time I see it, I think about how different it was when you bought it. I looked at it too. The new door I had hung the previous summer. The window boxes I had filled with deep purple lavender that had come back this year without any help from me. The roof line I was currently in the process of repairing, which would be invisible once the work was done, but which mattered anyway. It's a good house, I said. It is, Mrs. Calloway agreed. She handed me back the empty mug and smiled. Don't let anyone tell you different. I went back up the ladder. I finished the work before noon, and in the afternoon, when the light came through the newly sealed windows at the angle I had always loved best, falling in long warm bars across the kitchen floor, I had refinished with my own hands. I sat down in the middle of it and did not think about the $68,000 that had almost disappeared, or the signature that had almost been taken from me, or the family that had made its calculations and come up short. I thought about the floor, the way it had looked when I bought the house, buckled and water-stained and thoroughly forgotten, the months it had taken to bring it back. The specific satisfaction of work that makes something permanently better. That was the thing about restoration. It required you to look clearly at the damage, not to minimize it, not to paint over it, not to pretend it hadn't happened. You had to see it fully before you could fix it. And once the work was done, the repaired thing wasn't weaker for having been broken. It was just itself again, exactly as it was always meant to be. I had done that with the floor. I had done that with the roof. I had done it, without quite realizing it, with myself.